I'm going to give it just a few more seconds and I'm going to get started. I know everybody may not have logged on, but I do want to respect everybody's time. So maybe just a few more minutes and we can get started. Maybe we can use this time to just go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Claudia Perry, and I'm the director of the Institute for Family, and it's a pleasure to be here. Anybody who's not with the Institute, we'll make sure that we have our links and information in the chat so you can go back after and take a look at all of the resources and information that the Institute has to offer. But we do spend a lot of time supporting professionals and champions and family champions and advocates and all kinds of folks in every sector who support families and work with families. We provide professional development opportunities through our Center for Learning. We've got resources through our Light Lab and through our dashboard, interactive dashboard that we have on our website. We also offer an opportunity for people to collect their stories and through family narratives and the narratives of folks who work with families. We believe that stories are powerful and powerful devices for change. And so that's just a little bit about what the Institute does while we get started. But looks like folks are trickling in and that those few minutes helped. So with that, I am going to get started again. So again, my name is Claudia Perry, and welcome to this webinar, part of our webinar series. I'm the director of the Institute for Family, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'm really glad you could join us for this powerful edition of the Mission InCommon webinar series. And whether you're a returning member of our community or just joining us for the first time, I really appreciate you being here. I think we're going to learn a lot today in this conversation. This series is proudly presented by the Institute for Family, and we're an organization that's deeply committed to strengthening families as the foundation of thriving communities, especially in North Carolina, which is where we're based. We believe that when families are supported by every key sector, socially, emotionally, economically, and culturally, entire systems begin to shift towards wellness, justice, and resilience. Our work at the Institute is centered on creating spaces for reflection, collaboration, and learning across disciplines. We bring together voices from education, public health, child welfare, advocacy, and beyond to ask the question, how do we build systems that truly serve and uplift families? That's what we're all about. And that's where our new initiative, Mission InCommon, comes in. And this webinar is part of that new initiative. And it's designed to spark conversation and connection among professionals who share a unified mission to empower and support families by reimagining how our systems can function together. Each session of our Mission InCommon webinars will feature a dynamic leader who challenges conventional boundaries and brings bold ideas to the table, which is what we need, bold ideas and different voices. We dive deep into how interdisciplinary collaborations, community engagement, and equity-centered approaches can transform well-being from the inside out. So the last time in our other webinar, we focused on public health. This time, we're focusing on family engagement and education and how schools can become true community hubs that support families in meaningful and lasting ways. We'll explore how cross-sector collaboration can strengthen these efforts and create a more equitable system of care and learning for families and children. And we can't be more excited to welcome our guest in this effort today, Greg Schermbeck, founder of SchermCo and the SchermCo Foundation. Greg's work centers on empowering families, building bridges between sectors, and helping schools become vibrant centers of community life. His work offers a fresh and actionable perspective on what's possible when we put families at the center. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Before we dive in, after this conversation with Greg, we're going to open things up for a Q&A session where we'll address as many of your questions as time allows. And throughout this event, feel free to drop your questions into the chat anytime. We'll be monitoring it and collecting questions for the Q&A portion at the end. I've got two colleagues with me today, Maddie Atenese, who's our research lead, and also Tori Brazier-Weathers, who is our education manager, and also our communications and marketing team member, Jamie McKee. They'll all be helping me manage the chat. So if you've got questions, you can put them there. To keep things running smoothly, we've muted participants from entry. So if you're not speaking, please, of course, stay muted to minimize background noise. And if you experience any technical issues, just let us know if you can in the chat, and we'll do our best to help fix that for you. And also a heads up, today's session is being recorded, and so it'll be available on our website after we finish. If you miss any part of this session, or if you want to revisit it or share it with your colleagues, feel free. All you have to do is access it on our website when we're done. And so with that, let's get started. We hope this will be an active and interactive session that you'll enjoy. So we're going to get started with Greg. And Greg, if we could, let's just get started with your story, right? So what inspired you to launch SchermCo Foundation, and how did family empowerment become the heart of your mission?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me, Claudia and team. Pleasure to be here. And I see K-Roll James from my team, so shout out to K-Roll, because we couldn't do it without our great team members joining. So thanks for joining. But yeah, thanks everybody. I'm Greg Schermbeck, as Claudia said. Appreciate the intro. I a few kind of ways I think to answer that, Claudia, but I think a few key moments I'd offer is maybe before I knew it was a moment, but mom and dad were, and still are, thankfully, really important driving forces in my life. So education was always near and dear to us in the household. They didn't go to kind of traditional 4-year school, so I was the first one in my family to go. We grew up in lower income trailer park in Toledo, Ohio for most of my life, but education was always valued, and so they sacrificed a lot. And fortunately, I was able to go to school, probably more for football than for education, but that's a different story. And then from there, was accepted to Teach for America and started teaching. So I think that's really where kind of the career and journey in education began. And when teaching, right, we had all these different courses and like PD sessions on academics and grade books and behavior, but like zero on like families and family engagement and how to support families and support their kids. So that felt kind of wild to me as my start of my career in education. I'd say second, a few years later, I moved to Nashville and helped open a charter school in an under-resourced area. My first role in that school was dean of students. And so probably, as most folks on the call know, that's usually more kind of like behavior focused and reactive and not proactive. And I learned pretty early on, like, it's not a great way to live and not a great way to run a school, is kind of to be reacting to behaviors in the school and kind of be at odds with families. And so I kind of tried to use that role as an opportunity to re-envision kind of like what proactive support and proactive family engagement looked like early on in that charter school experience. But I think the last thing, early on in launching SchermCo, two kind of separate colleagues who were running schools, one in the district school, one in the charter school, reached out separately saying they wanted to kind of re-envision and reimagine what family engagement inside their schools look like. And so that was, was really all those factors combined, and that kind of last opportunity where we really launched deeply into the power of families, the power of family engagement, and then leveraging their voices and data to hopefully do what we drive and call family empowerment.
Awesome. I love that. I love how it connects to your personal experience as a young person in school and how it came full circle. I think that really matters. And engagement matters. When we think about it and what impact it can have, what changes for schools and children when families are meaningfully engaged? Like, what's missed when we fail to engage families appropriately? And what do we gain by doing that? By really engaging people into programs and services that were designed to serve them. What do we get from that? What changes?
Yeah, well, I mean, in short, everything, right? I think it's always continues to be such a missed opportunity if we are in the human services or child services space, and particularly in education, and we are not kind of reacting to and supporting the entire family along the way, whether it's in health or education or maybe traditional nonprofit services outside of schools. But we, Claudia, we think a lot about kind of co-creating solutions with families, whether it's on the family engagement side or helping them get connected to housing or kind of understanding where they are. I think so much of what we try to help schools with is think about families not as like transactional customers, but as humans on their own journey to support their students along the way, right? And so I think when we can take a more holistic, customer-focused approach, when we can think about how we engage families, when we can think about how we can value their insights and ideas along the way, that values their ideas, it values their lived experiences, and it values what they know. And then under those kind of right circumstances and right levels of trust, really powerful things can happen. And I think most folks on the call are probably a little positively biased, but whether that's reducing chronic absenteeism or helping students graduate and get on track for career or education or what have you, usually better when schools and families and folks are working together than working in odds.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the idea of thinking of it from a customer service perspective. I think it adds a different layer of respect and thought, when you approach it in that way. And of course, I love the idea of collaboration. Schools, based on what you just said, it sounds like they can't do this work alone, right? And one of the things in your work is the idea of schools as community hubs, is the place where all this can come together and all these people can come together to work on behalf of families. And so I know you've prepared a presentation to take us through and some ideas around this theme and to share some work that you've been doing in this area. So with that, let's get started. I think you can share your screen and we can go through what you have for us.
Great, happy to. Let's make sure we can get this rolling. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I can't see, well, I can see y'all, but I got to click. So if anybody has any questions or chats, yeah, please let me know. But yeah, here's just for the audience here, a quick presentation of more about us, our work, and then we'd love to just kind of ask some questions along the way and check in with everybody. But that's just my headshot in case anybody wants to see that. But as Claudia mentioned, we're actually part of two organizations. And so SchermCo is a social impact implementation firm that offers strategic implementation, project management support for social impact organizations across the country. Separately, what we're going to talk about today is the SchermCo Foundation, which is 100% focused on driving and increasing family empowerment across the country, but mostly focused on about 20 to 30 schools we support in North Carolina. So if you haven't heard about us, hopefully you will continue to hear about us after today. We're going to use today to talk obviously more about our data-driven family empowerment model. But outside of that, we do offer kind of these three other core main services, more on the SchermCo side, but focus on strategic implementation, workforce development, and data-driven corporate social responsibility. And some of you might be thinking about this, but these three services blend well and actually allow us to be better and better serve families and be better partners to our schools along the way. Maybe relevant here based upon where everyone is coming from. We're fortunate to be based in Charlotte, but we've operated in 18 states across our country and continue to grow. And so I think that's relevant here for everybody because we're able to do and offer and practice a lot of family engagement opportunities across the country and then bring those learnings and insights back to our hometown in North Carolina. And lastly, what I'd offer is just like a quick intro for our podcast fans out there. We have a podcast. I'm trying to do better of telling folks about it. It's called Square Pizza Pod. We host and interview leaders in the social impact space across the country. And it's been a fun platform for us to host incredible leaders and share their stories. And a little bit of a highlight as we just surpassed 10,000 downloads, which we're quite happy with and have listeners in 900 cities. And so shout out to anybody that's on this that checks out the podcast. So I'd love to just kind of like pause for a moment and maybe check in with the audience. I'll give folks a minute or so, but I'd love to just know if you could put it in the chat or please feel free to jump on screen and share more. If you could just say kind of who you are, your kind of background or what brings you to this webinar and anything you're hoping I answer for you. I would love to kind of know that so I can tailor any sort of responses. So if anybody feels comfortable just kind of saying who they are, what brings them to the webinar, and what they're hoping I can offer today, that would be really appreciated.
Awesome. We have people typing in the chat, so I'll make sure to read them out loud.
Cool, great. I'll just pause and give folks some moments. And here's what we'll do, team. Like, wow, everyone is doing that. I think Sarah's going first. Shout out to Sarah. We actually have a video here, so I thought this might be a better medium to show our work in action, rather than me just talking at you the whole time. So if it's cool, as you guys are dropping that in the chat, we'll come back and share out in a moment, but want to kind of create space for maybe a 3-minute video so everyone can see this work.
As an administrator, I believe that in our schools, you have to have 3 parts of empowerment. You need empowerment from our staff, you need empowerment from the students, and you also need that empowerment from our families. And so having SchermCo to come in is help to fill that third part of that triangle, as I call it, to ensure that we're building a strong culture here.
SchermCo's partnership has allowed us to go beyond some of those day-to-day operations and do strategic work that is important for building community and having an impact on our families.
A lot of our families want to help and want to support their students, but they don't know how. So it's given us a lens to start the conversations and the work behind not what we think our families want, but hearing from them firsthand and trying to meet them with their needs. They've really helped to ground us in the work that we need to do in order to get our families back in the building. Being really intentional, we try to ensure that we provided services and events that would bring them in, and SchermCo played a big part in us doing that work. The data speaks the truth. The parents see that we are invested in them, looking at the numbers and the events that they requested on the survey, they're happening in the building. And so they are grateful to come in and see that we are listening to what they want and need for their families. Starting with our surveys, really seeing what our families want, what they need, the best days and times for them to come into our building and our school. The school has grown and benefited from this work by just increasing our awareness, again, of what our families need and responding to it. I feel like there was a gap in between, and SchermCo's been able to assist us with filling the gap.
One of our goals is for our school to be a community school, and these events have allowed for that to happen and for parents to see the school as a resource not only for academics but for other needs as well.
And that has been remarkable as a principal, just to see that growth in our community and our staff, that we are inviting our families in, our partners in, and they know that the school is just an extension of the community.
Seeing families become more active in education has really allowed our work to become more meaningful inside of the classroom and inside of our day-to-day life. This partnership empowers me personally because it makes me feel like I'm not in this alone.
I am thankful that we've been able to leverage our relationship with SchermCo this year in such a way that has allowed us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do. And it just is a great extension of the work that we are doing here at the school.
Principals should make a decision to partner with SchermCo because we all want to see that engagement. We all want to see the connectedness in our families. And SchermCo is just a resource that can make that happen at your school.
In education, sometimes we can continue to do the same things, hoping that we get different results. And SchermCo provides that. I've never seen the support or the turnout in any of the schools I've ever been in based on the work that we're doing with SchermCo. And I know that is solely because it's all about the families, and that's what SchermCo pushes.
Okay, thanks for maybe taking a minute to view that. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so I can see Sarah. Thanks, Sarah. And before I keep going, any just initial questions or reflections from the video?
I had a question, Greg.
Yeah.
What was the moment or event that lit the fire that made family engagement a priority for you? Like, what was that catalyst event that said, "Bam, this is what I needed to do"?
Yeah, thanks, Tori. It's tough. I can't just choose one, so I might need to offer a few. I really think it was just a combination of when, even outside of maybe my personal experience of growing up and seeing how great schools I went to, even like traditional public schools were, and working with and supporting my parents and my family, to be honest. I think from a professional perspective, it was the district charter collaboration. So our very first kind of launch into the family engagement work was working with a charter school principal and a district principal that lived, the schools were less than a mile apart from each other, both in kind of Title I underserved communities in Charlotte. Both wanted to support and better serve families. And as probably many of you know, there's not always like super strong relationships between charters and districts. I had the fortunate experience of previously working in a traditional high school here in Charlotte and then going to launch a charter school. And so it felt kind of crazy to me that folks weren't working together under the right circumstances, particularly when serving kids and families less than a mile apart. Luckily, these two leaders that we had the pleasure of working with understood that and were willing to kind of collaborate. And so that first year was around convening a charter school and a district school together to co-host family engagement events together. And so to collect data, to bring in community partners, because guess what? The families at the traditional public school wanted the same things as the families at the charter school. And so they were looking for housing, they were looking for academic support, they were looking for after-school programs. So rather than these two schools, these two communities doing all things separately, what would it look like if we collaborated and bring them together? And fortunately, through that, my great team, our funders, were able to get some really powerful results. And then it's a long way of saying that whole year and the power of that whole year coming together was really impactful. And the one thing I'll say is, it probably wouldn't be too surprising, but we had multiple families that sent their kids to both schools. So like kid one went to one school, kid two went to the other. And we all thought that was the most beautiful thing, right? Because what's best when a family in an under-resourced area has as many options as possible to support their kids and didn't really care what school they were sending their kids to, but appreciate they had options and that both schools were working together to support them and their entire family. Sarah, thanks for your comments. I will do my best to talk about education policy, even though we usually go against some policy, but hopefully not too bad, but I'll do my best to address that, I promise. But thanks for being here. Great, I'm going to reshare my screen and then I'll pause again in a moment, but happy to share kind of more about our model and more context for you. So again, actually a good segue. So again, we started this work in 2018, 2019, and in the most recent, I guess, 2 academic years ago. So we started with 2 schools, this district charter partnership, and since have evolved, as you can see, to about 20 schools, serving 18,000 families, almost 10,000 attendees across 82 events, and being able to support and collect almost about 5,000 surveys, so we can really honor families' inputs and ideas along the way. So at a crux in terms of like what we do, here's the model we follow internally as a team and with our partners. And so we always start with mindset and communication. We want to make sure the partners we're working with have the right kind of growth mindset about supporting families the best way they can and kind of having that really core customer service approach. We're always working with our school partners to help collect data and then analyze that data. And so at a practical level, right, we think about a few things, right? Most schools and systems say they value families, which is great. But then when we ask who is the team in charge of working with and supporting families, we often know we get confusing looks because those systems and schools aren't often staffed or funded to support it. So we have to know the structures and the capabilities of the school, who is supporting the family. The second thing that we kind of zoom out and say is like, in many school systems and in many schools, we have, let's say, 1,000 adults for math. Each of those adults is sending 1,000 kids, or total 1,000 kids are coming to a school. And then so we just received these 1,000 kids from these 1,000 adults. But what is the communication and the collaboration like with that kind of 1,000-person community? And if it's not consistent, if it's not value-based, and if we're not kind of co-creating or trying to set conversations with those 1,000 people, we're really just receiving and not honoring their lived experiences. And so we try to flip that in our second kind of step here with collecting data, either through focus groups and surveys. We then leverage that data, a few technology tools, and break it down so each school gets a data report. Then we use that report to drive programming throughout the year. Okay. Third part is we build a family empowerment committee. This is always a fun fact. We always ask if families want to either join the PTA or join the family empowerment committee in our pre-survey. And guess which one always gets the most responses? You guys probably know. I'll assume from the smiles that you know the answer is the family empowerment committee. And I think when we've always asked that, families have always said, well, growing up, I didn't have money. And PTA to me just means about raising money. So why would I join a PTA if I don't either have money or I don't want to raise money? And so whether it's right or wrong, I think there's probably a nationwide branding problem with what PTAs are, what they're supposed to do. But I think the Family Empowerment Committee clicks with so many families and leaders. One, just because of the words, but two, because they want to be invited in to empower other families. They don't want to be invited in to raise money for cupcakes and breakfasts. And no disrespect to cupcakes and breakfasts, but most families and parents want to do a little bit more than that. And that's what the Family Empowerment Committee does. In terms of step 4, so this is when we're really implementing our model in partnership with our schools, hosting events based upon the data we collected in step 2, often hosting between 3 to 4 events throughout the year, focused on academic support, jobs, and financial literacy. By step 5 is towards the end of the school year, we're rolling out our post-survey, collecting data to make sure we grew in the right areas. Then, of course, looking at school-wide academic and attendance data to make sure those trends are going up. And then by the end, we're meeting with our school partners, having kind of a year in review reflection, and then beginning to plan for the next year as well. Okay, in terms of what we think differentiates our models from others, again, we always want to focus on PD and collaboration. And so how can we use our network of 20 schools and partners and families and allow them to connect with each other while also adding professional development opportunities focused on families? Again, data, we don't do anything without data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. And so we have to always focus on that in order to drive programming and support for families. Second, third, with this work, we couldn't kind of offer any of these programs without our community partners. So we have a pretty robust network, as you can see, of at least 70 vetted community partners across the state that have specialties around housing support, mental health, fitness, jobs, etc. So it's our job and opportunity to bring those partners into the school to support families based upon the information that we have. Just to go a little bit deeper about our model, what I'd offer is this, again, we talked about data. I think many of us know most school systems, foster care systems, healthcare, well, maybe not healthcare is a bad example, but not really well funded, right? And so we're not well funded. We don't have a lot of staff directly focused on supporting families. And so if there's nobody in the school focused on families or funded, it's often, right, just another thing that a really good assistant principal or principal has to do. So we can't say we're honoring families if we don't have anybody in a school or in an organization actually dedicated to honoring families. So that's part of our job, is to help take some of that work off their plate in partnership with them. The other part we'd say is community partners. And I think just given our work in kind of a third space where we're not a school or kind of a corporation, but so many community partners, whether it's like a Goodwill or an Urban League or groups focused on financial literacy, want and need to support and provide resources to families based upon kind of their jobs and their quota and whatnot. I think what we push them to do is, rather than, hey, we have this financial literacy program, come get on 2 buses, come across the city and come to our nice, really beautiful $10 million facility that you've never been to and you don't know anybody. Why don't we reverse that and bring those humans into the school? So if we go back to our other example, if we have 1,000 people and 1,000 kids coming to a school, picking their kid up in their neighborhood, we kind of have like a friendly captive audience. Like, why can't we just bring our programs and our resources to the school, use the school as a true neighborhood hub, rather than asking families to come to us? Customer service approach, number one, bring ourselves to those families to best support them, right? And so fortunately, we've been able to get and work with so many community partners that understand that vision in order for us to use schools as a hub to best support them. And so we think in our best days, when we're solving for kind of these four things, is when we're able to offer and implement some really powerful solutions and partnerships with our schools and our families. Small but important is like most humans, regardless of like where they grew up and race and socioeconomic status, usually get hungry around like 6 o'clock. And so no matter any event we do, we always offer food. One, because I like food, and if I'm going to be there, we should eat. And two, less selfishly than me, we should try to feed families if they want food. Second is we're fortunate to have what I think is a pretty innovative partnership with Lyft, the rideshare company. As we were doing more of this work and looking at surveys, families said they'd love to come, but they have transportation challenges. So then we called a few school districts and asked for a bus, and they told us to kick rocks. And so we didn't have an ability to like get a bus to help families. And so I think through some team and some collaborations, we had a wild idea to call Lyft and see if we could do it. So now we have an RSVP form and a good partnership with Lyft that any family within one of our school partners, if they want to come to any family empowerment events and also parent-teacher conferences, academic report card pickups, we offer them 100% free door-to-door service via a partnership with Lyft so that they have no issues or concerns around transportation or hurdles getting to the school. And so we really think those two things stacked on top of our model show we're trying to do our best to help schools meet families where they are, but also really honor where families are and their lived experiences. In terms of what the actual events look like, a few things, right? Like nobody wants to come to curriculum night. So what we try to work with our schools, like stop calling it curriculum night. It's boring and it's dated. Like let's kind of get some new titles to support families. And so we try to use our creative minds with that. Each of our events are kind of clearly structured, and we'll go to that in a minute. And so we don't really do like fairs or festivals. My team tells me that I'm getting old and grumpy, which is probably true. But every one of our sessions is focused on like families sitting down, collecting resources, and engaging with community partners based upon the data they have. Is also where I say that there's nothing wrong with fairs and resources, but it's just not really what we do. We're more focused on kind of resource exchange, insights being gathered, and creating space for families to go deep with their teachers and go deep with community partners. And so as you can see in like a quick example, right, in this event here was called Getting Lit, Financial Literacy and Math Mastery. We have our check-ins. Oftentimes what's happening is families come in, they drop their babies off so the babies can do math activities for the students in one part of the school. And then families are kind of going to their financial empowerment resources so families can work to improve maybe their credit score, open a bank account, open a checking account, etc. And then usually by the end, we're doing maybe a separate resource, or excuse me, a separate like class around financial literacy or tax prep, whether that's focused in the gym, the cafeteria, or different breakout classrooms across the school. Usually doing some sort of announcements, of course, for our school partners. And then they're grabbing food on the way out, and then transportation or departing from the school. So obviously times change, focuses change, but it's often a pretty similar flow of the sort of events we promise to our school partners. In terms of does this work? We think so. Here's some recent data and outcomes you can see of the sample case in one of the most recent years. 16 out of our 20 partner schools met or exceeded growth and also had more than a 10% reduction in chronic absenteeism in 4 of our schools. Now, this is also where we say this isn't just because of us, right? We're really fortunate to work with so many incredible school leaders and staff members at all these schools, but we're also fortunate that they continue to bring us back and think our partnership and our model has led to a lot of these academic and attendance outcomes they're searching for. I think outside of academics and attendance, we also, of course, collect data based upon what families have requested. And so, again, in one of the most recent years, we had 250 adults complete financial education at the kids' school at a family empowerment night. And so not only can they come to connect with their teacher and understand like how to help Greg balance fractions, but at that same night, they can sit down for a 45-minute financial education class to help meet them where they are on their financial literacy journey. Related, we had 176 families fill out job applications at these family engagement nights. So again, kind of same process. Families can come, they can connect with Greg's teacher, help Greg balance fractions, and also meet with 4 to 5 different hiring partners and get in the application process to begin to find their next career opportunity. And so again, that's just the least that we can do based upon the feedback they give us to best support families. And then although it's not just as important, but we'd say pretty important, as we said, most of our friends working inside schools and nonprofits are overworked, don't have enough funding, and don't have enough capacity. So we usually save school partners about 40 hours a month with our team, not just like quote unquote consulting and giving them advice, but actually helping them planning the events, build the flyers, call Lyft, order the stuff, set up the tables. We're much, I think, smarter and strategic than just those things, but those things are really important in event-driven work and supporting families. Let me just pause here. I know we got some stuff in the chat, and I'll stop sharing my screen for just a minute, but would love to just pause, respond to anything in the chat, or answer any questions just about the basis of our model before I keep going.
I had one quick question before. Everything you said is just awesome. I love it because it's really what schools need. It's what families need. I love how you talk about the surveys and the data and bringing in that parent perspective, and making sure that you're not just asking people to come to the school for what the school needs, but you're offering families something they need as well. It sounds like a huge lift as far as collaboration is concerned, and bringing together all these people from all these different silos. How do you bring all these people together? What is the unifying thing that encourages people to like shed their turf, the turf, and this is my turf, this is your turf, and just shed all that and come together for families? What's your secret sauce for that?
Yeah, great question. I think one, Claudia, it always starts with our schools. And so we can't do this work without schools believing in the work. And so part of that is making sure, we're kind of fortunate to choose our clients and that they have the right mindsets about working with families so that they're open to collaborating with others. Those leaders and those staff members in those schools want to get better. They want to share best practices and they want to learn from others. So it all starts with them and having the right mindset. And fortunately that they then choose to work with us. I think the second part is similar to community partners. So many community partners want to support families. They want to find out where families are. And they've been fortunate to agree to work with us and kind of be part of our vetted community partner network so that tonight with one of our schools at 6 o'clock, they're having a cultural fall festival to celebrate all different cultures at their school and across the city. And so it's a Friday at 4:30. Not everybody wants to go to a cultural fall festival, but we had, I think, more than 17 community partners sign up to go to our school to support these families. And we're not going to take all the credit for that, but it's because I think, one, they value working with schools that value families and have the same mindsets that families do. And two, thankfully for Carol and other team folks on my team, they know it's going to be a pretty well attended and well respected event. So it's going to be on time. It's going to be efficient. There's going to be agendas. There's going to be exit tickets. Like we got it down to a science. So I think we're able to find a like-minded group of community members and schools that all value families. And then I think when we create those right conditions and we're nice humans and we take care of them and we give them enough heads up to do things, it's been super easy to bring people along the way and ask them to join in this journey with us.
Maddie, were there other questions in the chat that people might have?
Yeah, I was just getting to that too. There is, Claudia always reads my mind, y'all. So Greg, I'll read these out loud because I know that we might have some viewers, again, when this is recorded. So we had one great question from Tori about, within the data collected, are professional development sessions offered for families to help them with any skill deficits they may have with interacting with the school?
Tori, in all honesty, it's usually PD sessions offered to the teachers to help them fix any deficits they have in communicating with families.
Well, I just thought about that as I told you while we were behind the scenes earlier. As a former school administrator, sometimes families have their own hurt from their past experience, especially in underserved communities. And so sometimes they may not know how to go and interact at the school or get over their school trauma from themselves, which is the internal barrier. And so I was just wondering, is that a question that's even asked on your surveys? Or, do you offer them some guidance on, hey, I know this happened to you, but now you have kids. This is how you go and communicate with the teacher when you're angry or if you don't understand.
I'd say a few things. Like on the surveys, we're always, we have some like kind of options of community partners and focus areas that we know we can connect families to. And so we have that. We have a write-in section, which families have wrote in before. I think a few specific ones is like if a family's had a tough time or they're rolling up to the school and, whether it's an aggressive tone or had a bad morning or angry or something else, right? I think some of our school partners already have an understanding of like how to work with families in that way. But usually the most immediate thing is like, hey, we understand you're, kind of struggling about Greg's behavior. Did you know we have a family empowerment night coming up next week focused on like parenting skills and like how to like connect with your kid better? And so when we always are partnering with schools and have those events, there's always like a next thing, right? There's always an opportunity to support families where they are. And then not just say like, hey, family, this is just a thing we have, but also like, did you know how and why we're planning this? It's because we collected 600 surveys from the school and 550 families asked for like academic support. And so please join us in this opportunity to like work closer with us. And so those kind of like, so what and next opportunities are really important. The other thing I'd say, Claudia, more tactical, is we've had an uptick in school partners ask us around hosting parenting classes. And also from our surveys, I don't have kids yet, but my understanding is that when kids get into like middle school, they start acting a little crazy, respectfully, across for all of our school babies. And so some parents don't know how to necessarily parent a middle school baby the way they did an elementary school baby. So particularly a lot of our middle school principals and families are asking for us to bring in community partners around best practices in parenting middle schools. And we're happy to do that. And there's a number of community partners that offer that. And I think even the biggest thing is that we've been fortunate to create so much trust with families and schools that they feel comfortable asking that. Because if they don't feel trusted, if they don't feel heard, if they don't feel like your school will do something with the data, they're not going to take the time to give you feedback and ask for support. And so we always want to, one, thank families for that, but two, remind our school partners that them even asking is already a huge win and helping us get really close to kind of working really closely with families and with the larger community.
Yeah, it's awesome you just hit on the trust, because we have some comments actually in the chat from Beverly and Sarah saying that trust is often a huge barrier for families in engaging with schools. Yep. So you hit it right on the head for what people are saying in the chat too.
Great. I didn't see that, but glad it was good timing. Yeah, I think we all know this on the webinar, right? But it's like, this idea of trust is so important in all, probably most human and adult relationships, right? But particularly when it comes to like somebody's education or healthcare or foster care or anything else, right? But if we send our living born human to a school and we don't hear back from that school until November, and it's because like Greg threw a chair across the room and now Greg's suspended. It's like, what are we doing? Like there's so many opportunities to connect with our parents, to honor them, to get their insights while we get the privilege of serving their kids, that the least we can do is ask for their input and ideas along the way to build that trust. So then that we know Greg's a little squirrely, and if Greg does end up throwing a chair or isn't paying attention, it's a little bit less kind of scary for both parties if we can have a chat about like getting Greg back in line, knowing we have like a pre-existing relationship built on trust that started super on early in the school year.
And I'm going to work from the bottom up of the chat too as they come in, and I'll work my way back up. So we have a question from Sarah about the data collection. And she asked, in your data collection, do you collect any indicators of foster kinship status? I'm wondering if you've gotten any feedback from these families.
They would have to, we don't have, Sarah, I don't think we have like a self-selected option around like adoption services or supports for families. But again, I know we've had foster partners and organizations that offer kind of foster care supports come to many of our family nights and been really strong community partners. And I know we've been able to work with a number of foster families that have kind of left specific comments in the write-in sections that we can then, they can leave their information. We can follow up with them and do that in a way to connect them to as many resources as possible.
Okay. And then we have one from Cassandra. Cassandra, I hope either way I'm saying that correctly. And she said, I know there are maybe logistical challenges to hosting family nights without kiddos being present. And then apologies if I missed this since I joined late. Are there any opportunities to support parents as people and not just in relationship to having kids, but recognizing their individual needs, supports apart from being caregivers?
Maybe. I'll try my best, but Cassandra, please put something in the chat if I don't answer your question directly. I think we always go back to the surveys around what families want and need. We ask what days they want. We ask what time is good for them based upon different working schedules. We usually record or send information back to families that can't make it in person. To go deeper about maybe what we touched on earlier, every year most families want more heads up and advancement around when events are happening. And so with our schools, we've been fortunate to work out a pretty good system, essentially that we call like the 10x5 communication matrix. And so we try really hard, but never say never. We try really hard with our school partners to never put a event on the calendar for families unless it's at least 2 weeks out, so 10 business days. 1, because families have asked for a heads up, so we should honor their request. 2, some families need to figure out transportation, childcare, etc. And 3, and they got to like figure kind of the rest of life out. So once we get that date on the calendar, it's at least 2 weeks ahead of time. Then we help our schools build 5 custom communications to go to families to make sure families are aware of the event. And some people think 5 communications in 10 days is crazy, and that's okay, but that's what works for us. And we also kind of liken it to, if you're going to shop at Nike or Starbucks or something else, and if they have a sale, how many times do they email you to remind you about the sale to get your money? Usually more than once, right, Claudia? And so if we want families to come and we care about families coming, we should at least remind them and send them a few reminders about this event we're hosting on their behalf. And so when we can do the 10-day window, when we can send 5 communications, that always gives us like a really strong turnout to families for family nights. And then Cassandra, last thing I would say is for most of our schools, one of our community partners is always offering like a childcare room. And so if Greg's dad is coming because Greg needs to know how to balance fractions, but also like Greg Jr. is 2 and is not yet needing to balance fractions, we have like a childcare room where families can drop off Greg Jr. so dad and Greg can go figure out how to balance fractions together in like an academic math classroom. So we're always doing our best to leverage all the data and insights families are requesting and then making sure we respond to that data through the actual family engagement nights.
And it sounds like the topics you pick, I guess, do you get input from families around that? Because, it's just like you're on the one hand, the kids are getting their enrichment. And on the other side of it, families are getting enrichment with the literacy classes, with the, it sounds like you've got opportunities for people to look into workforce development, job assistance kinds of things. So how did you come up with those topics? Do families tell you, like, this is what we want to hear about? We want to become more financially literate. We need information about jobs. Is that how you got to those topics?
Yeah, 100%, Claudia. We have probably 15 to 20 options already on our survey that we send, and then we kind of tailor them each year. But from those And from collecting, we have this number somewhere, I think almost 30,000 surveys the past few years from families. Top 3 resources are always academic support to support Greg Jr. at home, jobs for me as an adult, how do I get a better job, mental health services, and then usually like health and physical exercise. And so if we know, and then obviously financial literacy. And so if we're asking 1,000 people what they want, and let's say we have 50% return rates and we get 500 responses, and of those 500, 400 are asking for financial literacy support, academic support, and access to mental health services, guess what our events are going to be that first night, right? And so we don't need to make it more complicated than that, but allowing us to do that. And then I think the power, although it may not seem sexy, is that if you ask 1,000 people what they want, 500 respond by the end of September, and the end of October, you're giving them what they want. That goes back to that word we used for trust earlier. So that, man, they like asked, they responded, they're offering it. And then even if I didn't come, they're sending me resources afterwards based upon what happened. And once we came to that event in October, they have another one planned in December around tax prep because so many families ask for taxes. So it's continuing to just honor families and meet them for what they're asking for, and then just doing what they're asking for.
I love this holistic perspective you're taking to families, because again, obviously families are more than just the kids' academics in a classroom. Like all these things we know affect kids' academic performance and just families' holistic health. So, and I don't know if this is the same survey that you do this on, but I know earlier you came up with that innovative solution of using Lyft because transportation was a huge barrier. I'm curious if there are any other barriers that families have identified as being very big roadblocks to, attending these sessions or to engaging with school systems in general that y'all have been able to mitigate through listening to them. Again, going back to that trust portion and hearing them out.
Yeah, great question. I mean, one we haven't solved for at a basic level is like oftentimes we'll get one that a parent will say, I have a middle school kid and a high school kid. I'm going to go to my middle school one first because middle school Greg is a mess and my high school one's fine. So it's like, how do I get to both places at once? So it's like trying to balance one school partner without having another school partner. But oftentimes we just invite that family to our events anyways. So I think it's like still trying to figure out how we help families with multiple kids get across the city to one school or the other. I'd say maybe a more innovative one that we've been working on the past few years. One is financial literacy, right? And so knowing that families generally have more stable jobs and more stable bank accounts that can be more present at home with their kids and support them on their academic journey. And so us going really deep on financial literacy has helped. I think the third thing, Maddie, that's been a little more innovative is on the high school side, we can have career and workforce development nights for both Greg and Greg Jr. And so whether Greg Jr. is going to school or looking for a job, we can bring in those employer partners to make sure Greg has a job ready by the time he walks across his high school stage. We can also, in that very same night, have a separate breakout room of workforce development opportunities and training programs for parents that are looking for their next career opportunity. And so being able to have a dual gen approach in one night for both the 17-year-old and the 47-year-old is something that we've been kind of tweaking on and doing a lot more the past few years that have had really strong, powerful outcomes.
That's awesome. And Tori's question actually I had a question. Oh, it seems like she might have a question follow up.
Yes, I do.
Before I get to this one.
Yes, I'm gonna put both of them together, Maddie. So
Perfect.
I'm gonna do a plug, Greg, for our person Sarah. So as we know, foster care and kinship is growing nationwide to support the needs of some children who need substantive care. I'm gonna put a plug to say maybe this is some data you guys might want to collect on your survey because this group of parents have a totally different subset of barriers and challenges that they have to meet to even make decisions for kids in school. And I know because I'm a former foster parent. And so I was going to say this could give you a subset of data to help illuminate a growing group of caregivers who have a totally different set of needs. Like they can't make a whole lot of educational decisions, but they're the ones that got to show up to make sure the kid gets to the school. So just a push there, just a thought to put out there. But my other question was, seeing that you guys work nationwide now, 18 different locations, what are some positive trends and some gaps that you guys are seeing in family engagement?
Like, I think like our friends in Tennessee do a good job with the community school model. Like we've done a few projects in Knoxville, and the United Way in Knoxville funds and incubates community school models, which are schools, whether they're district schools or charter schools, written into their mission, 100% focus on families. And I think we would probably all argue all schools should be, but they're not. But these are very specific schools that receive supports and money just to continue to embed families in their decision-making journey along the way. And so we don't, frankly, in my knowledge, have a really strong, like formal community school model here in North Carolina, but across the country, we see some that are doing really incredible jobs that we love. I'd say too, we have a partner who we've had on the podcast, Lakeisha Young, Oakland Reach, who's recently started and now I think scaling a high impact tutoring program led by families. And so they essentially worked with a group of schools in Oakland, worked with a group of families from those group of schools, kind of ran them through how to be high impact tutoring, I think either in reading and math, which is a growth area or like a needed area in Oakland, and then kind of raised money, kind of paid that team of families to go into other schools to tutor other kids and having like really powerful academic outcomes. And so when you talk about a 2-gen approach of training families that you have really good trust for, allowing them to be tutors, paying families to be tutors, and then those families are tutoring different children to support their children on their math or academic journeys, that's like game changing. That's huge. Like I'm trying to raise money to bring that model to Charlotte to pay her to do that, right? Because that's incredible. So I think like those are just 2 examples of things we really like to see or that are just like super impressive. I think oftentimes, Tori, any gaps is usually not asking or not leveraging insights for families. And it's not taking away from like the conversation in the carpool line or like at the football game or anything else, but we're often making, it's Friday, so excuse my language, big ass decisions that support 1,000 families without any sort of data. We're just kind of just like guessing, like we think this is what families want, or we're going to do our best, but it's like, we're not using any data, we're not using any insights. And so when we kind of do some gentle pushes, we try to remind partners, whether it's ones we're working with or ones we're talking to, is don't make these decisions that's going to affect 1,000 babies inside this neighborhood without leveraging data and insights from families. So the gap we often see is just the gap in not using data and not using family voice before making any sort of those decisions.
Thank you. That is my thought exactly. I appreciate that.
Amen. Good.
I see everybody nodding. Everybody's like, yes, family voice narrative. You have to capture that. Oftentimes you see people with really great and wonderful ideas, and they're wondering why their program isn't successful. Or we did all of this, and parents didn't get anything from it, or they didn't participate. And you have to ask, did you ask families if they wanted it? Did you ask them how they wanted it? Did you ask them what time they needed it? And so I love how you sort of brought all that in. But you hit on something when you first started, and just talking about the time crunch and the time constraints. I think for most people in schools, if you say, well, is family engagement important? And they will tell you, we need it. We must have it. But then it's like, do you have time to do it? Do you have dedicated personnel? What is it that we can do, that all of us as members of this community can do to help people understand, kind of like a policy question we talked earlier, how do we help the people who make the budgets, who help us get all this to families understand the importance of dedicating funds and personnel and staffing and programs to parent and family engagement. It is essential. And how do we help everybody know that so they can begin understanding how non-negotiable it is?
Yeah, I mean, just to offer a statement, then I'll try to respond to your question. I think when I was a teacher, they didn't have this, but I think still now. Well, let me do a shout out first and I'll stop blabbering. I'm going to shout out one of our partner schools because they were the first school that we've worked with that, as a result of that, they dedicated 2 full staff days this year just on family engagement and the family engagement philosophy they're going to use. So it wasn't like a cute little 45-minute session after lunch before back to school about like, here's what we do with families. 2 days. 2 days of breaking down of like, here's how we think about families, here's how we talk to families, here's how we respond to families, here's how we do family. Like, so that's incredible, right? And that was so awesome to see. I think on the flip side, most schools and school districts are not prioritizing funding for families, for family engagement, or professional development for teachers, of like first-year teachers, second-year teachers, principals, how we chat with families, how we support them. If you go a step farther, oftentimes our school partners, will have flex Title I dollars and they will spend it on like a librarian assistant or a part-time family engagement person or something else. And all that's cool. And they hire a family engagement assistant, a part-time person that's great, doing their best. Guess how much PD the part-time family engagement person goes to? Tori, thank you. Yeah, so 0. So we're not training those people. We're not supporting them. We're not giving them a book. We're not giving them a toolkit. We're just like, yeah, cool. You seem qualified. Go sit up in the front office and like chat with families. Like, it's not that simplistic, but sometimes it is, right? And so it's like, one, understanding the ecosystem that we're in, I think, and maybe all of us do, given what brings us to this work. But 2, pushing the right levers and raising the right awareness of that, like, hey, a school district might have 80 schools and 60 part-time family engagement team members trying their best, working to support families, but they have no resources. They've never been trained, and they don't have like access to any community partners because they didn't know they were out there and they didn't know they could reach out to host them, right? So I think it's like a simplistic but still important approach not to overlook of what the current system is doing and then how we fix the gaps in that system.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Maddie, do we have other questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we have time for the couple more questions in the chat. And then I know, Claudia, you had some great questions you wanted to ask too. So there was one from Beverly, kind of off of some of these things we're talking about, of Tori's question earlier too, and comment about, special populations and things like this. Beverly asked, are you having to do anything different to engage families of children with disabilities?
I'm not an expert in, special ed education or supporting, specifically students with select disabilities outside of just my experience teaching and being in schools. I'd say maybe 2 things. One is that from my experience, we know most of those families and students need to be heard and need key individual supports. And so at least through the surveys, we can collect that data. We can bring that data back to the school and make sure the school has the ability to follow up with that parent or that group of parents to fully understand and support them and their student with any sort of disabilities or needs they have. Kind of connected to that is then tapping our network of community partners. If the school doesn't have the resources or the knowledge or the skill sets inside the school, we can tap Charlotte, or in Charlotte, a group like Council for Children's Rights that offers like counseling for families that have legal support, that needs legal services for students with special needs, or additional academic support or academic programs outside of the school that have service offerings for students with special needs. So I think it's not an easy one-off solution that we have, Beverly, but we can usually tap our network and use our network and our capacity to help get the right resources directly to the school or directly to the families based upon our partnership with the school.
And Cassandra, I know it seems like the question was addressed a little bit earlier, but just to reiterate, and then there was a follow-up comment on the question about, navigating resistance when school districts and stakeholders, decision makers don't seem to want to financially invest. And I know, Greg, you kind of touched on that just earlier. And then her comment was, I have also seen funds allocated, for instance, after school activities for kids for exposure, but won't prioritize after school reading groups, especially when test scores show there are learning gaps.
Yeah, I mean, I learned early on, you can't sell the unsellable. And so we do our best to tell our story in terms of our services, our belief in our model. If, a school partner or a principal just like has had a bad experience with families, or it doesn't value family engagement, we can explain what we do and the importance of the work. But if they're not going to get it, they're not going to get it. And we'll find kind of people and partners that like singing the same songs we do, and if that metaphor flies on a Friday. And on the flip side, I say, look, we also know principals have a tight budget. And if they got $5K, $10K, $15K to spend, they're like, look, I got to either increase reading scores, use this $15K for a part-time family engagement person that's maybe not trained, or 3, pay like an after-school program. Like, they're kind of strapped, right? Like, they should get all 3. They shouldn't have to choose those things. And so we understand and are empathetic to those that are trying to figure out in kind of the system that they're in, while maybe, Cassandra, to your point, at the same time saying, you have an immediate like 3rd grade reading crisis and you got to get all 100 of your 3rd graders to read on grade level. Totally get that. But there's a world in which we can also support all 100 of their families and teach their families how to teach all 100 of their kids at home how to be better readers and engage them in their learning along the way. So it's not often something that's front and center for principals or partners, but if we have the conversation and they're open to having a conversation, we can help them maybe understand the bigger picture for a moment of like when we're engaging and bringing families in, it's almost a force multiplier for the positive on academic outcome, behavior, and attendance alone.
Awesome. And Sarah, again, made a really great point. I'm seeing a partnership in the making, or like a project in the making right now for the special populations, but that just represents another important overlap of our resource families, because we know that our kids in care, for better or worse, are more likely to funnel into special education. So kind of looking at those populations and maybe some key information to, add to your survey, which again, I'm still in shock that your response rate is phenomenal. I'm still holding on to that.
Yeah, Sarah, send me a note. Happy to chat and learn more. Certainly what we don't know and ways we could help. Yeah, I'd say, Madeline, to the survey part, it's not always 50%, but we're getting pretty close. I think the schools we work with year over year consistently are kind of up and to the right in terms of survey collection. I think because families continue to see the response that this will happen once they fill out the surveys. They know all the events and the resources that are going to take place. 2, again, we go back to the communication window. And so we help our schools, and it's usually way more than 5, probably send somewhere between 5 to 10 reminders about the surveys. We translate all the surveys, and we also do paper and digital copies. So we're essentially trying to create access in all ways to make it as easy as possible to fill out the surveys. And then we also have incentives, like for our elementary school babies, like the class that gets the most surveys and like bothers their parents to turn their surveys in gets like a little popsicle party. And we usually do raffles for like $100 gift cards to families because we honor their voice and we care about their voice, and we'll give them a $100 gift card as a thank you for taking time to fill out the survey. So we can do like fun, innovative things that doesn't have to be just like another boring, like check the list off survey, but then we can use the data to respond to it. And the last thing I'd say here too, Madeline, is how many of us have like filled out a survey and like gotten a response about what the organization is going to do with the data? Usually not much, right? So for every one of our school partners, once the surveys are closed, we roll up the data. They get a 1-page letter home thanking them, highlighting trends from the school community of like what the percent of respondents asked for. And then we hide those trends and say, hey, 50% of families completed the survey. Top 3 trends this year that families requested are financial literacy, jobs, and academic support. Over the next year, we're going to host 6 family empowerment events between October and June. Each of those events will be focused on these top 3 resources based upon your requests. And so just like continuing to close the loop and communicate and use the data to drive communication is all kind of goes into our model to drive higher level of survey responses.
Greg, I have one more question. So I'm loving all the great work you guys are doing, and I did put a shout out in the chat about y'all doing that heavy lifting for the school admin team, because when y'all do those little things, it allows them to do the even bigger things. But has the support you've provided been self-sustaining for the schools? Like after you guys have worked with them, have they been able to continue to work?
Some have, some have not, I would say. I think some of, frankly, like our charter school partners in under-resourced areas that are savvy in writing grants and or just have more financial capabilities and budget flexibility can hire somebody to replace us at full time, which we're fine with and happy with, as they're off on like a better journey. Sometimes our district partners know, but I'd say we've thought about two ways to kind of counteract that, Tori. One is we built like a toolkit that we can share or will share that's 100% free, that if family or if school partners never talk to us again, they can follow our model, get access. It's a digital toolkit. They can get access to our survey. They can get access to some of our school partners. They can get access to our framework. So they can use that 100% for free as much as they can. The second part is we're doing more kind of like train the trainers. And so if whether we're rolling off of a school or school doesn't have a full budget, we've gone into schools and helped do a 1 day, 2 day, 3 month kind of partnership where we're kind of walking side by side them, training up their staff so that if they're not going to hire us to do it kind of with them, we can offer some best practices and guidance along the way. So the last one's a little self-serving, but they're both true. And that we're doing our best to still meet schools where they are in order to serve them, whether they are having us around the full year or asking us to just come in and train up staff a little bit.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat for sending all these great questions. I love reading all these, and it's been a really active conversation. So, and again, I know we, afterwards, if questions come up, we will send our emails in the chat and we will make sure we get them to Greg at some point to get it back to you. So I just want to make sure y'all know that we will answer questions, even because I know sometimes after a great conversation, they come later on too.
People's minds open up at the end. It's like, I should have asked that question. So I know we're getting close to time, and I did want to just, again, thank everybody for the thoughtful conversation and the awesome questions. And so one thing we always kind of wrap up with is, if you rule the world, if Greg ruled the world. So, it's clear that schools are better off all around when families are engaged. But that doesn't always happen. I know it requires intention and collaboration and a lot of effort. And so before we close, I'd just love to get your vision, for the future. If you could redesign the way schools and families, communities engage, from the ground up, like what would that look like? What would you hope to see, 5 years from now when we do this webinar again and your vision has come to fruition? What would you love to see in that area of family engagement, where I just see a theme of respect and trust based on what you've talked about. But what would you really like to see if you build it from the ground up, family engagement in the future?
Yeah, trying to think about how to answer this in a semi-smart way. I mean, one, I think the system needs to be funded properly in order to support what's currently happening in the system. And so 5 years from now, the system needs to be better funded to support schools, nonprofits, and foster care families. I think with the assumption of money, we then need more people staffed inside these schools to support the 1,000 families in the scenario we're learning, or at least using today. And that person needs resources and access to resources to support families. I think 3, that person needs to hopefully have each school in our state, at least in right now in North Carolina, if each school had a family empowerment committee that was focused on leveraging the talents and the insights from families, I think it would happen much faster than 5 years in terms of the academic and attendance outcome that would improve at that point. And the last thing I would say maybe not sexy, but still true to me, is a goal. Like, I won't necessarily call out any school districts in our wonderful state, but I think less than 1% have a very clear goal or definition for family engagement. So we run around and say stuff about families and engaging the community, but if you ask them what that means, like, well, we like have this event. It's like, cool. Well, what's the goal of that event? Or like, are we going for a number? Are we going for attendance? Are we like, what's the goal of this family engagement? And also, how do you define it? Because you don't have a definition. You're just going to be running around kind of doing stuff. So I think in 4 or 5 years, if we have those key variables, the current state we're in terms of North Carolina will be much better in a number of ways.
I love that, especially the definition of what it is and having a goal. I think we all know if you don't have a goal, people don't, nothing happens unless you have a goal associated with it, right? Once somebody knows, hey, we're going to be evaluated on this, we've got a goal associated with it, people take things more seriously. So I would love to see that 5 years from now. I'd love to see that next year, honestly. If we just take everything you said and like just push it up, we would love that. So, wow, we have learned a lot today. You've given us a lot to think about, a lot to move forward on. I see some future collaborations in the mix, which is what this is all about. When we envision this webinar, we envision this process, this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring people together from other sectors, start conversations about what it means to really connect and collaborate, what happens, what really can expand when we begin to think about things, not just in our silos, but from a collaborative standpoint. And I think we can all agree that children doing well in school, families engaged in their schools, is better for all of us. And I think about the community that gets built when a person crosses the threshold of a school, like kind of like what Tori was talking about. People don't always have good memories of school. But when I come to my child's school now, and I realize that the folks in the school aren't just helping my child, but they've listened to me, they've heard my perspective, and I'm going to go to this event. My child is going to get something, but I'm going to get something too. That makes a world of difference as far as trust is concerned. And we've got partners in the mix who are helping with that. We've got families in the mix. We've got teachers who feel supported by families who now feel supported. So I love it. So thank you all for joining us. I think we've learned a lot. You've given us a lot to think about in the way of what we can do to help schools become community hubs, and keep on the lookout for other things that the Institute will be doing in the future. It's coming. We've got 2 more Mission InCommon webinars scheduled, and we'll make sure we reach out to you about those. Our next 2 topics have to do with our community and community-based organizations and collaboration. And then our next topic will be around social services and collaborating with that sector of and that system in our community. So Greg, again, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for sharing your vision about your insights and your history in this area. And we really appreciate it. And we look forward to what's happening in the future for SchermCo and the SchermCo Foundation. And we appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank everybody for joining.